Anderson would come in off the tag and hit a couple of clotheslines. He'd hit the forward rolling slam on Rude. He'd go for a cover. And then he wouldn't get the pin there. Rude would kick out. The referee would go to count 2, but then Anderson would move out of the way, and then James Storm would accidentally hit his partner with an elbow. Then Hardy would be back in it to even the odds. Then he gets Storm out of the ring, and then Jeff would use the back of Mr. Anderson to hit a senton dive onto James Storm on the outside. Then Anderson would set up to hit the mic check, but then Rude would fight out of it. Then he'd hit Anderson with a double R spine buster and would go for the pin, but Hardy would be back in the ring to make the save. And then James Storm would be back in the ring to hit Hardy with the Eye of the Storm. Then Beer Money would be, they'd set up to hit their finisher, but then Hardy would throw Storm out of the ring again. And then Rude would think that Storm was behind him so they could hit their finish, but instead it'd be Hardy. Then Mr. Anderson would also be sporting a bad cut above his left eye. Then he'd hit the mic check on Robert Roode, and he would pin him for the victory. Pretty good tag team match. I definitely enjoyed it. I mean, you've got 4 great talents involved, and you had Beer Money, who were at the top of their games at this point as well. So your winners for this would be Jeff Hardy and Mr. Anderson, the enigmatic assholes. 13 minutes, 56 minutes this match would get, and I went ahead and gave it a 3.5 rating on this. I thought it was a really good match, and I enjoyed this one as well. Then after that, we would have the main event of the evening. It would be the TNA World Championship match. TNA World title would be on the line. It would be Rob Van Dam defending against Sting. Rob Van Dam versus Sting for the first time ever. Before the match, there would be the video package, of course. It is a world title match. There was also one point, though, I remember where Hulk Hogan would say that if the decision would be in his hands, then Sting wouldn't be allowed in the building, which I'm kind of confused because it's like you're supposed to be like an executive. So I think he'd have some kind of authority, but I don't know. We'd have the entrances, but before Sting would come out, they would show him up in the rafters heading to the ring. Or at least that's what they wanted you to think, because you can clearly see in the left part of the screen, if you look down to the ring below, there's like a red carpet on the canvas. And there wasn't any point on the show where there was like anything that had that there. So this was pre-recorded, and when this was recorded, who knows, but Sting would then come out and make his entrance. Then RVD would be shown in the back getting ready to come out, and then he'd make his entrance. Was pretty over with the crowd, as he always had been throughout his illustrious career. And then we'd have the championship introductions from Jeremy Borash and the bell would sound, World Championship main event. I will say that one thing for this is it definitely had a big-time feel to it, and it definitely felt like it belonged as a main event. Even with the show being in the Impact Zone. If only the show had actually been on the road, I think it actually would have felt even bigger. But you got Sting and RVD, who are like 2 completely different wrestlers, 2 completely different styles. So it'd be interesting to see how this would, mesh up here. Start the match, both RVD and Sting would lock up, with Sting getting Rob in the corner. He'd hit him with a punch and then take the fight to the outside. Then him and RVD would fight in the crowd. Van Dam would throw Sting into the wall a few times. Earl Hebner would just allow them to fight outside the ring. RVD would then hit Sting with a leg drop on top of the barrier. On top of the barrier, but there's steel guardrail, whatever you want to call it. Then a little later, Sting would back body drop Rob into the concrete, and then Sting would start to throw RVD into the wall. For the first 4 or 5 minutes of this match, it wasn't like even in the ring. And then Sting and Rob Van Dam would finally get back in the ring, and Sting would be on offense. He'd hit RVD with a couple of Stinger splashes in the corner, then he'd cover him for a 2 count, but then RVD would kick out. Rob Van Dam would then begin a comeback with a spinning heel kick, and then both men would be down. Keep in mind, at this point, we're like 7-8 minutes into the match at this point. So then RVD would hit a series of moves, then he'd go for the 10 punches in the corner, but then Sting would push him off, and then Rob would duck a clothesline and hit him with a side kick from the middle rope. RVD from there would hit Sting with a front slam, followed up by a split-legged moonsault. He'd then cover him once again, but Sting would kick out. Then Sting would try to regain the edge. He'd charge at Rob in the corner, but Rob would get the elbow up. He'd then go for a crossbody on Sting, but he'd move out of the way, and Earl Hebner would take the crossbody instead. So we'd have a TNA pay-per-view main event with the official down and out, something that just seemed to happen all the time back then. That was always a problem. Then Sting would grab the baseball bat and then begin to hit RVD with it repeatedly. Then out would come Jeff Jarrett, who would appear, who it was said earlier in the night by the commentators that he was at home in Nashville watching the show, another old TNA constant, running during a pay-per-view main event match. He'd take the baseball bat away from Sting. He'd hit him in the gut with it and then hit him in the chin with it. Then Rob Van Dam would take advantage of the situation. He'd hit him with the Rolling Thunder. And then he'd go for the cover with the referee now revived, but Sting would find a way to kick out. Then Rob would try to go for a monkey flip on Sting, but then Sting would move out of the way. He'd then try to hit another Stinger Splash on RVD, but he'd move out of the way, that being Rob, and then Sting would miss that as well. Then RVD would hit him with a kick, and then he would go to the ground, and then he'd hit Sting with the 5-star frog splash, and he'd nail it. He'd cover Sting, and he'd pin him there, and would retain the World Championship. Not the best match. I mean, I don't think it was terrible, but the problem with it was just it got off to the wrong start. I mean, they were fighting on the outside of the ring for like the first half of the match. Then it started to pick up at one point, but then, they'd had the referee go down. He'd had the run-in with Jarrett. So that was that, I guess. But Rob Van Dam would retain the world title. And the match would only get 10 minutes and 51 seconds as well. And I go ahead and give it a 2-star rating on that one. As I said, it wasn't really good, but I mean, it wasn't like terrible either. So, that was that. But yeah, this was the whole show for a final show rating out of 10. I'm actually going to go ahead and give it a 7. Maybe that's a generous rating, but I just thought overall it was a really decent pay-per-view for TNA. And there were some things on the show that I really enjoyed, particularly in the beginning and the later parts of the show. I could do without seeing anything else in the middle part ever again, though. But, if you have the time to check out this Slammiversary this week or whenever you simply have the time to do it, and if you have Impact Plus, I would recommend watching it for sure. And if you don't have Impact Plus, I'd also recommend getting that as well. I mean, it's $7.99 a month, like $8 a month, and you get your first 30 days free as a subscriber. It's a really good deal. Like if you were a TNA fan of the past, or if you're still a fan to this day of Impact Wrestling, or you just have a curiosity about the history of TNA, I'd definitely get Impact Plus if I were you. But I do have Impact Plus, so I guess I don't have to worry about that. Things to watch on this one, definitely the Kurt Angle-Kazarian match. That was by far the match of the night. I mean, it was the first match of the night. That's how they opened up. But that was by far the best match of the night. So I highly recommend checking that out. I definitely would watch the Jay Lethal and AJ Styles match. That was also a pretty good one. It may not be like super memorable, but it definitely was a really good match. And also Beer Money versus Hardy and Anderson. That was also another really good match that I liked. So I'd recommend checking that one out as well. And, of course, if you were just going to watch the pay-per-view as a whole, you'll see all of that, so then you don't have that problem. But if you didn't want to watch the whole thing and you just wanted some things to, just go through or whatever, just to see it, those are the 3 I'd recommend the most. The final reminders before we close the show, first being that follow JNC Radio, follow all of our social media platforms. You can follow JNC Radio on Twitter and Instagram at JNC_radio. That is JNC as in JANDC_radio. Be sure to like our official Facebook page, JNC Radio. The social media platforms are the best way to stay on top of everything JNC Radio, so I'd highly recommend following us on those platforms. Like if you need an update, because we're going to have a schedule change, we're going to switch a show, or we're going to switch a time when the show's going to be, or just anything, or like the upcoming lineup of like what we're going to do. Just social media is just the best way to stay on top of all that. So follow our pages on there. And if you're a fan of the show, or you're like a new listener of the show and you really enjoy it, be sure to spread the word about JNC Radio. Tell your friends, tell your loved ones, tell your family, tell everyone. Anyone that's a professional wrestling fan that you think would enjoy this show and like enjoys wrestling podcasts or whatever, be sure to spread the word about that and just get the name out there more. It'd be greatly appreciated. And then once again, JNC Radio is available on all platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, CastBox, you name it, we're on there. So check us out on all those platforms, iHeartRadio. So if I haven't said that already, I probably did, but whatever. But and then once again, thank you for all the support for the show for our first year. Of course, tomorrow is going to be the 1-year anniversary from our first show. So just once again, thank you for support there. We'll be back next week or this week, however you want to call it. The first show is going to be starting on Sunday. We'll have our Slammiversary 2020 or Slammiversary 18 review and recap. We'll have our Extreme Rules recap as well on Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And we'll have Rewind number 33 on Tuesday, which will be the Great American Bash 2008, the bonus edition of Rewind. So that's all, everyone. Hope you guys continue to stay safe, follow the proper procedures, still stay socially distanced, even if you're in a state that's not a high-risk state that's seeing an increase in coronavirus cases. Be sure to still remain, socially distanced from everyone and just follow the proper procedures. Stay safe at all times, and remember to wear a damn mask, because the sooner you do that, the sooner we'll get through this difficult time period here in the U.S. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had a lot of time going back and revisiting this show. As I said, it's the first time I'd seen it in 10 years since it had happened in June of 2010. So hope you guys like this one, and be sure to check out the show if you haven't either. And yeah, that's all the time we got for you today, and peace out.